I've always wanted to start one of our videos off this way, and I feel like we should get Mike Goldberg on the channel at some point. But coming up next, we have Natalia Silva representing Brazil. She's taking on the UFC debutante. It is Tereza Bleda out of Czechia, the Czech Republic's own. Bleda is a big-time up-and-comer that you really need to know about. And if you're talking about really hot prospects in this division, she is definitely a fighter that you have to pay attention to. Already at 20 years of age, undefeated as a pro, undefeated as an amateur, some really nice amateur wins on her record. The former Octagon flyweight champ, time at bantamweight, time at flyweight on her ledger. But if we do consider this, she came in on Dana White's Contender Series this past summer. She took on Maia, and Craig and Matt Allen happened to have a show previewing Dana White's Contender Series. So what we're going to do for you folks, we're going to throw it on back to our preview for Tereza Bleda going on Contender Series. We're going to update you with the fight that she had, and then really hammer home a couple of points about these two women who now, both of them, have really, really bright prospects and futures in this division. So we'll throw it on back to that preview, and then we'll really get back to those details. Well, we will kick it off, Matt, with the first fight that is on this card, and we have Tereza Bleda taking on, and this is going to be a fun one, Maia, but if you go out and you do the tape study and you try and watch her fights, it's not Maia, it's Nayara Arnaud. So that's who you're going to be looking for if you're trying to watch tape on her. But if we focus on Bleda, just to start, I mean, Matt, for the Czech native, she's been all the hotness for as long as she's been in MMA.
Definitely.
Undefeated as an amateur. She went 6-0 over there, 5-0 already as a pro. And for Bleda, Matt, we talked about her a couple of weeks ago with Lucia Pudzilova coming back into the UFC because Pudzilova was in an Octagon tournament in 2020, and she lost to a 19-year-old Bleda.
Isn't that wild?
It is. And the craziest part about it is, and I know a lot of people focused on it, well, nobody knew what the rules of the tournament were. Octagon threw it on just to kind of get some people some combat experience, get them moving at the height of the pandemic, which is all fair. But Bleda had a lot of success in that one fight. I was overly critical of it in the Pudzilova prediction for Wu Yannan, but when I do focus in on for Tereza Bleda, I love the level of competition that she's faced throughout this run. I know her nickname on Tapology is considered Rhonda. I read a couple of interviews, one by Extra.cz, another one by Top Fight CZ, so over in Czechia, that's where they're doing those interviews. And she said, that used to be my nickname when I was an amateur. They kind of gave it to me on the way up, but don't have a nickname right now. Not going to go by that moniker. But if you do watch her fight, she doesn't really fight like Ronda Rousey. She is a wrestler for sure, but she's not going for a lot of upper body throws. She's not a judo player. She's going to run in, try and grab a double leg, and she really does have great entries on those takedowns. So you love to see it. Very high level for a very, very young fighter. But again, I consider this, she's 20 years old. She does have some very good experience. The fights that I really like to hone in on, the fight against Martins wasn't just some Brazilian fighter that they bring over to Europe and, hey, you beat a Brazilian. You're going to be the champion. She fights Martins and has a little bit of a hard time. Every time she goes in to close the gap, Martins goes in to pull guillotine. A couple of them were very tight, round 1, round 2. But if you look at it, Bleda is able to kind of keep position, keep pace, and then get out of it and spend meaningful amount of time on top. Her fight where she won the belt over with Octagon, the flyweight belt, was against Maddalena Lima, who's on Dana White's Contender Series in the past. And in that fight, well, she looked amazing, but also looked like a weight class bigger. And that's the other thing for Bleda. She also has bantamweight experience as a pro and as an amateur. She's a very big flyweight.
She is, and she does use it to her advantage. She's like a wet blanket on top of a lot of fighters when she is able to get that position. And you're right, she's an intelligent grappler, and she shows the ability to fight out of tough situations and then make it dominant for herself again. The problem is, I do think Bleda just is a higher level grappler. I think these fighters are very similar. I just think Bleda has her sliders turned up. Maybe not even 10% more, maybe even 20% more. I do like her style of grappling towards MMA a lot more, because here's the thing. With Maia, she can finish with submissions, don't get me wrong, but I worry about her losing a lot of the minutes and a lot of the moments in between those bigger actions. And with Bleda, at least I do like her top control a little bit more, so we're okay. Let's say it doesn't end in a finish. Neither fighter's able to get a submission. The judges are probably going to reward Bleda for a lot of her top control and her grappling, other than Maia.
All right, so you look at it for Bleda. She came in on week number 7, Dana White's Contender Series this past summer, taking on Maia, a fighter who had, listen, great experience to her credit. She's a Novo Nhau fighter. She really is somebody that's going to try and grapple with you. You looked at some of her previous wins. She really was a submission threat. And the thing that I found weird going back and watching Bleda when she's taking on Maia is the commentary, all they seemed to want to focus on was how bad Bleda's striking looked, which was weird because she's a super grappler and she completely out-grappled the accredited jiu-jitsu black belt in Maia in that fight.
That's the thing. When you are a specialist in one area, I don't really care if you have weaknesses in other sports. And that's the thing about Bleda. She is so good in that one spot. It's like what we talked about with Erin Blanchfield, for instance. And I know it's difficult to compare a fighter making their UFC debut, although they are coming off Contender Series, to one of the best prospects in the division and now a rising contender, because that's what Blanchfield is. But you don't really care about some of the weaknesses Blanchfield has in her game because you realize, okay, once she's able to get it to where she excels at, you don't really care about any of those other spots. And for Bleda, not only is her grappling phenomenal, the first thing that I really thought about with this matchup is physically she's going to be so much bigger and stronger than Natalia Silva that I really do think if she is able to get to that one spot, if she's able to get that top position, she's going to be a heavy and difficult fighter to get out of that one strength.
Yeah, and if you do go back, you watch that fight that Bleda had against Maia on Contender Series, she actually does drop her in the third round. It's a knee to the body that sends her back, but really had good opportunities in the grappling exchanges in that fight. Ends up winning, all three judges scoring at 30-26. And I think that the commentary was a little bit more critical based on the fact that she was a -600 favorite. They wanted to see a little bit more out of her, but to me, proved enough. And so you've heard quite a bit about Tereza Bleda. Let's focus on Natalia Silva. When Silva made her UFC debut against Canadian Jasmine Jasudavicius, I didn't think much of Natalia Silva. And the craziest part about it is she was a +200 in that matchup against Jasudavicius.
Impressive.
She looked like a -200 in that fight. Like, she really did. I mean, 2 of the judges scored at 30-27. 1 scored at 30-26. And she trains out of the same gym as Paulo Costa. And it's his brother that, if I'm not mistaken, is the head coach out of Team Bohacha. For Silva, holy smokes, like, I knew she had a Taekwondo background, and I knew that she was really accredited there. She had broken her ulna. She was originally due to take on Victoria Leonardo a year prior, so she was out for a little over 2 years from being the Jungle Fights flyweight champ to then fighting Jasudavicius, but her striking looked nothing like the fighter that we saw against Jasudavicius.
And she's a very complete striker at this point. Like, I really like the volume that she was able to display in that fight because that really was her outlying skill and what really did separate her from Jasudavicius, who you don't really get a good opinion for how good Jasmine is if you just watch her fight against Silva because of how good Silva will look. And you're 100% right. Going from a +200 to just dominating a fight is not something we see all that often, but I really do think that with what Silva was able to show and the improvements that she has to be able to make throughout her career, because that's the thing. Silva had a bad record at one point in her MMA career, but the streak that she has been able to go on as of late has been impressive and has been able to show that. I'll say the same thing about Bleda, but it's something we say a lot about younger fighters. When fighters are 20 to 25, they make these massive improvements every single time we see out there. For Bleda, she still has that potential to make those improvements every time we see her. But what I will say about Silva is she hasn't been stagnant throughout her progress. I think we have seen an improved fighter every time out there, and that's a great thing to see because there's fighters that we see get into the top 15 and get to borderline title shots who do not fix holes in their game, who just stay the same form as what they are. They get better at what they're already strong at, and their weaknesses remain their weaknesses. For Silva, I do like the volume that she's been able to display, and I do think that if she is able to keep this fight to the feet, which is a big ask, because again, I think this is a massive talking point in this fight, is the physicality of Bleda. I think she will struggle on the feet, because you're right. I know they brought it up a lot on Contender Series. Bleda has good power, but I do think that does come a lot from her physicality, and because she is willing to throw a lot behind her shots. Think about a guy like Demian Maia. Demian Maia is not a good striker, but Demian Maia was willing to throw a lot of power behind his strikes because he was never worried about getting taken down. For Bleda, I don't really think she's worried about the counter wrestling or the counter grappling from a lot of her opponents, so I do think that at a certain point in her career, we will see that evolution of her just having more confidence in her own strike.
For Bleda, it's a lot of 1-2, power on the 2, it's a lot of leg kicks, and then, of course, power grappling. She goes across the cage, she'll really reach for those double legs. For Silva, she out-grappled the Canadian champion wrestler in Jasudavicius her last time out. The other thing is, she has great lateral movement side to side. She's really speedy. She can get those counter hooks in there and then just zip right out of trouble, just like Adesanya did from rounds 1 to 4. Don't count round 5.
I still can't get over that fight, Craig. I'm not going to lie.
Don't sweat the technique, but when you do look at it, she nearly finished the fight 50 seconds in with a flurry of hooks to Jasudavicius. But my biggest thing is, for Natalia Silva, she has 13 wins. she has quite a few by submission. 6 of her finishes by submission are by armbar, so she is a specialist in that regard. We'll see if Bleda is going to be able to figure that out once it does get to the mat, if it does get to the mat. We have a look at the odds in this matchup. Silva open a plus 100. She's a minus 185 favorite right now. Bleda open minus 120, plus 150 on the comeback. We have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt. Surprise to us as they are to you. So Silva open an underdog. She's a favorite right now. I'm going to say fans probably going with Silva, but ever so slightly. I'm going to say over under 60% Silva.
I'll say under.
I'm going to say under, and it's over. So 484 votes, small sample size, start of the week. 64% with Silva, 81% by decision. For the 36% that have Bleda, 86% by decision. Natalia Silva, again, went from a plus 200 underdog, being a crafty striker on the outside, but with very low volume, needing to utilize takedowns, get submissions, to look like a world championship striker overnight against somebody who had a UFC win in Jasdivizius, win over Kay Hansen. Regardless of that, Silva did look so much improved in that 2.5 years that she had been away from 2019 to 2022. For me, I really like the physicality and the takedowns out of the younger Bleda in the matchup. So I'm going with the underdog in Bleda here. But again, Silva, I threw it out there in the tweet after the fight was done. Not only did I look like a goop ball and not taking Silva, but who would have known that she was going to look that good? But B, I said she looked like a future contender. I think both of these women are going to be ranked at some point in this division. It's just for me, again, those takedowns, hot and heavy from Bleda, and I do think she's going to be able to get the win.
I think this fight is it's very black and white if you really want to look at it in a non-objective way. Like, Bleda's going to win 99% of the grappling exchanges, and I think Silva's going to win 90% of the striking exchanges. The difference is, I think Bleda's pressure, along with her clinch, is going to be able to at least get her close enough to not absorb a lot of those shots from Silva at range. I think that's going to be key for Bleda. If she can keep those volume numbers low for Silva and be dominant enough with her grappling, I think that will erase the striking efficiency of Silva out of the mind of the judges, and I do like Bleda's effectiveness with her grappling on the mat. I don't think she's going to sit in full guard, lay and pray. She does do effective grappling. She has good ground and pound, will threaten with submissions, and I do like her for those aspects. And what the thing about Silva is, I almost worry that she's almost too good at grappling for her own good in this matchup for this reason. I worry that she's going to play off her back a little bit and go for submissions, and that might waste a lot of time, because I don't know if either lady's going to be able to get a stoppage in this fight, so it's probably going to go to a decision.
96-31 significant strikes in favor of Silva in her matchup with Jasdivizius, but in this one, both of us going with Czechia's own Tereza Bleda to get the win. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have. Main event of this card, Derrick Lewis taking on Sergey Spivak. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.